What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Little Sauce-Core, the one who never knows best, and in today's video I'm bringing you guys my top 10 DLC character wish list for Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls. As I'm sure you all know by now, Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls will be officially launching on August 6th, and I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to that game quite a lot. I will say though, however, that when we got the initial reveal that there were only going to be 20 characters on the base roster, I was a little bit disappointed and underwhelmed by that number. But I think it's safe to say at this point that now that we've gotten the official reveal of every character on the base roster, I'm pretty impressed. I think they did a pretty good job considering the character limit, right? And we also know that we'll be getting 4 more characters as DLC in the first season of this game. And they mentioned before wanting to be able to support this game for like 10 years or so. Whether or not they hold up that end of the bargain, who's to say? I guess time will tell. But we could probably expect at least a few seasons worth of DLC being added to this game, and so there will be several characters. And despite not being the biggest comic buff or the most knowledgeable guy around when it comes to Marvel, I have been asked quite a lot, hey Lotus, who would you like to see as DLC? What characters do you want to see added to the game? And so I plan on answering that in today's video. Now hopefully you are seeing this on Wednesday, July 22nd, because July 23rd is Thursday, and it's the start of Comic-Con. I heard through the grapevine that Marvel Tokon will be getting an official announcement at Comic-Con, and while we don't know the exact details of that announcement, obviously, one could probably surmise, hypothesize, theorize that we'll be getting one, if not all 4 of the characters in that season pass revealed at this trailer, this panel, this announcement, right? So hopefully I get this video out before we know any of the DLC characters. I think it's just more fun that way. And then of course, whenever we do get the reveal announcement or whatever they end up showing, I'll probably make a video covering that as well. Now, I do want to get into my list, but before I do, we got to yap just a little bit more because we got to set some ground rules, okay? I got to throw out a couple of disclaimers just so we're all clear, you know what I'm saying? I know not everybody needs to hear this, but some people need to hear this, so I'm going to go ahead and get it out the way. Number 1, this is not a prediction video. These are not the characters that I expect to be added to the game. These are the characters I personally want to see added to the game based off my own personal tastes and interests, okay? Number 2, this is not me trying to create a list or a roster of characters that has a variety of archetypes and play styles and is, you know, makes the game really well-rounded and appeals to a bunch of different types of players. No. This is me. This is my list. You know what I'm saying? I'm appealing to my own tastes, the archetypes that I like, the aesthetics that I like. So if we start going through this list and you're like, wait, but then what? Isn't it redundant to have this character and that character and that character? It's my list. You know what I'm saying? That being said, number 3, I am not saying that I'm hoping and praying that all 10 of these characters get added. Honestly, I'd be pretty happy and excited if just like 2 or 3 of them got added, or if it's just my number 1, because these will be ordered from my least wanted to my most wanted, from 10 to 1. You know, we're gonna be going in that order. So like, I'm not saying that I need all 10 of these characters. Just a couple of them would be cool, but if it's my number 1, just that one would be dope too. Number 4, as previously established, I'm not the most well-versed in the world of comics, okay? The group that I'm the most familiar with and like the most in all of Marvel is the X-Men. So I know that's kind of boring and kind of cliche for some of y'all, but it's gonna be several X-Men on this list, okay? And the 5th and final house rule we gotta establish is that I understand that they mentioned before they want to include characters in this game that weren't previously in fighting games. I'm not really worrying about that or thinking about that or taking that into account with this list. Again, this is my wish list, okay? So I'm not limiting myself to that specific parameter. This is just, if I could pick anybody, who would I pick? And this is the list I came up with. Now, with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. Kicking things off at number 10, we have Nightcrawler, the first X-Men on the list. And don't worry, there will be a mix. There are some non-X-Men on this list, but we're gonna start it off with one of them, okay? Bear with me. I always thought Nightcrawler was a pretty cool character, and while he's not my favorite member of the X-Men, I think his powers and abilities would lend well to a fighting game and make him the kind of character that I would want to play. First of all, his main thing is teleportation, and I love when a character that I play has unique movement options. And I know we already have a little bit of that with characters like Iron Man and Magneto, for example, being able to fly, but I want even more of that. I mean, even Magic kind of has her portals, but we don't have just a straight up teleportation character yet, and I think Nightcrawler would obviously make that an essential part of his kit if he was implemented into the game. And I think that could be pretty fun. Not only being able to left, right, but also high, low, you know what I'm saying? I could see that being pretty sick. We can kind of do like a pseudo fast fall with teleporting from the air to the ground, and then also going left, right, crossing up the opponent. I think that could be really fun. And even just using it as a movement option, or as a means to get into neutral, you know, you call a beam assist, teleport, now you're in, you know what I'm saying? Start your pressure. You know what I'm saying? You see the vision because I'm, you know what I'm saying? Nightcrawler is also one of like the super acrobatic type of characters in the Marvel universe. He's always flipping around, clinging onto walls, jumping off of things, spinning around and doing that type of thing. And those types of characters and playstyles always appeal to me, right? Like somebody who's like super nimble and agile and acrobatic and flipping around. I like that a lot. And I would imagine that they would want to translate that into a fighting game. You can do stuff like giving him like unique wall jumps and just acrobatic ways to get around the screen. And I just think it could be a lot of fun. Oh, and by the way, y'all know me, Nightcrawler is also a master of fencing. Yeah, he uses a sword, sometimes two swords. And the only thing cooler than using a sword is using two swords at the same time. So I would love to see him flipping around and jumping all over the screen with two swords in hand, you know, a couple of foils or a couple of sabers or something. You know what I'm saying? I think that'd be pretty sick. You know me. Hey, it's two archetypes in particular I'm always gonna gravitate towards: sword boys and ninja girls. Okay, so you know, you go ahead, throw a couple of sabers in Nightcrawler's hand, give him a little teleport, little flippy dippy whippy. We in business. Up next at number 9 on my list, we have Miles Morales. And I know. Chill. I wouldn't even say I'm a webhead. I'm not a Spidey sexual, okay? I get it. We already got a Spider-Man in the game. We got several Spider-Man characters. I understand. And honestly, for the most part, I agree with you. I'm not so Spider-Man pilled that I just need another version of Spider-Man in the game. And that's why he's all the way down here at number 9 and not in like my top 5 or top 3 or nothing like that. But with that being said, there's something about Miles Morales where he just got a little bit of swag to him, you know what I'm saying? To be completely honest, I think that's a lot more likely that Spider-Man would just have an alternate color that's an homage to Miles Morales, as opposed to Miles Morales actually being added into the game. But if there were going to be another Spider-Man added to the game, I would want it to be, and I think it would most likely be, Miles Morales. Now, I'm sure most of you know what the differences are between Miles and like a Peter Parker, for example. But for those of you who don't, are questioning, well, how would he be any different from the regular Spider-Man? Well, one of the key differences between Miles and Peter is that Miles has electric powers. He has the ability to do things like create little shock waves and fire venom blasts. And I think if you incorporate that into his kit, that already helps him set apart. He also has like a little venom beam that he can fire off on some like pseudo Kamehameha type shit. And I think incorporating things like that into his kit would already help set him apart if you make that like a defining characteristic and like the key piece that his kit is centered around, right? However, y'all know me, okay? I recently learned something new about Miles Morales that I didn't know, because I haven't read his comics. I've just seen the Spider-Verse movie, and that's honestly it. Now, if you read the comics, you probably knew about this, but unbeknownst to me, when was y'all gonna tell me Miles Morales had a sword? Yeah, Venom Saber, I need that. Bro, you see this thing? Nah, stop. If Spider-Man with a sword is probably lame to some of y'all, but I need that in my life. I don't care. I think it's sick. Especially, I don't know, maybe seeing regular Spider-Man with a sword would be kind of lame, but seeing the black suit with the red trim, Miles Morales with the plasma, man, I need that. I did not know that Miles, first of all, apparently he trained under Colleen, right? So he's got some Kenjutsu experience up his sleeve. He's quite the adept swordsman, but he can use his bioelectric powers to like manifest a sword. I didn't know he does that. That's so sick. So yeah, you give him a sword, that immediately separates him from the Spider-Man that's already in the game. That would make him pretty different. So that's an easy way you could have them both be in the game. I don't know how like often or relevant this is to his character, but like that's the version that I want to see. So like I said, when you start seeing some reoccurring trends and patterns and archetypes throughout this list, keep in mind my list, my tastes, my opinions, not trying to be versatile, not trying to appeal to y'all, talking about me. I gotta put me first. But anyway, moving on, at number 8 we have Moon Knight. And hey, one word, 4 letters, aura. Moon Knight is just one of those characters that I think looks cool as all hell. I mean, the fit, the aesthetic, the color scheme is white and black, but it make it look so crisp, and then the whole moon motif. Yeah, I'm rocking with that. I don't know why I did this to symbolize the moon. I guess it's supposed to be a crescent, but you catch my drift. Oh, something else I wanted to mention about this list that I forgot to at the top of the video is that initially when I was crafting it, I wanted to push myself to try to pick characters that weren't in Marvel Rivals. And then I took a look over at Marvel Rivals and I realized they've got over 50 characters in that game now. Now, obviously, the Marvel Universe has way more than 50 characters, but my bag ain't that deep. You know what I'm saying? And it turns out a lot of the characters that I think are really cool are in that game. And honestly, using that game as a reference point is probably a good place to look at and see some of these abilities I may not be as familiar with and see how it could translate to a video game, and then think about how it could be spun into a fighting game. So eventually I stopped caring about that, and you'll notice that a lot of characters on this list from this point moving forward are in Marvel Rivals. And I did kind of look at their kits. I don't play Marvel Rivals, not really my type of genre, you know what I'm saying? But I did look at some of these characters' kits in that game to give me extra, you know, insight, not only as to their abilities, but also ideas on how they could work in a fighting game. But the thing with Moon Knight is that he seems more kind of like a zoner, you know, kind of a long range character in that game, where it's all about his onks and throwing out projectiles and everything like that. And I don't think he necessarily has to work that way in a fighting game. Like, yeah, he should absolutely throw crescent darts as part of his kit. Like, I feel like that's pretty crucial. But he has like other divine abilities like necromancy and power absorption that I think would make him pretty cool to play in a fighting game. In Dragon Ball FighterZ, and be prepared to hear me reference that game a couple of times for obvious reasons, but in Dragon Ball FighterZ, there's Super Baby too, right? And Super Baby has an ability to basically summon the assists of the opponent's team once you've KO'd them. Now, you can't really do that the exact same way in Marvel Tokon, because unlike DBFZ, in Tokon, there's only one health bar, so you're not necessarily KOing other characters. So I guess it could just be if you ever end up like tagging or like hitting the opponent's character at some point, you then gain the ability to summon them and use them alongside your other assists and other special moves. I think that could be kind of a cool thing to play around with. I guess it wouldn't really necessarily be necromancy, but you know, if you kind of squint your eyes and reach just a little bit, that could be a thing. And also like with the power absorption thing, you know, where he could, you know, tag the point character with his onks and kind of steal abilities, somewhat akin to like how Majin 21 in DBFZ does with her command grab, where she gets the move steals. I think you could do something like that, and I think that could be really cool as well. Because like I said, like, yeah, you know, throwing the crescent darts and the onks and everything, that should absolutely be part of his kit, but I don't think he has to be limited to being a zoner in that way. And obviously he's skilled in a variety of martial arts as well, so he can do hand-to-hand combat. He can have a standard, you know, normal move set with punches and kicks. But I think he's got some other abilities as well they can play around with. He does do some stuff like, you know, his ability to like blend into the darkness and control the sky, and he powers up, you know, when there's a full moon and things like that. How you translate that to a fighting game specifically, I'm not necessarily creative enough to figure out. Maybe you can give him like a moon gauge that goes through the different phases of the moon, and as it goes from like, you know, I forget the exact order, waning gibbous, waxing gibbous, everything like that. As it goes from a crescent moon to a half moon to a full moon, he gets stronger and stronger. Maybe on certain stages, he's more powerful if that stage is darker. If it's nighttime, if you transition to a darker stage, he gets stronger, something like that. Maybe the moon gauges fill up with wall breaks, or every time he lands this specific special move, and when it's at a full moon, that's when he's at his most powerful and his moves get more powered up, or he deals more damage or something along those lines. I think it'd be pretty cool. Like I said, there's definitely ways to do it. I'm not a game dev, but I think Moon Knight overall could be a pretty cool character. I just think he looks super dope. Next up at number 7, we have the one, the only Jubilation Lee, one of the latest additions to Marvel Rivals, actually. And she's a character that I wasn't super familiar with, but because of her addition to Marvel Rivals, I've been seeing a lot of her on the timeline, and I got to thinking, I got to look, and I was like, damn, Jubilee's really cool, huh? Now, to be completely honest, unlike with Moon Knight, this is a character where I'm really not sure how you make her anything other than a zoner, which is not something that really appeals to me that much, but she is so cool that I kind of still like to see her in the game anyway, even if I don't end up playing her, which I probably wouldn't if I'm being completely honest, because the idea I have in my head of the type of character she would be is like a zoner trap character. Yeah. I mean, think about it. She's a vampire, and that's really cool. And they could definitely find ways to lean into that a little bit more in her kit. And you know, Blade is obviously right there, right? But I feel like most of her kit and her abilities would be centered around her ability to create these blasts and like these fireworks, right? Her whole main thing is that she generates these energy plasmoids that she calls her fireworks. And I mean, well, they look like fireworks, right? Now I think it looks really cool. By the way, like I said, I did my ghouls, I did some reading, I did some learning in preparation for this video. And I did learn that she is one of the characters that was affected by M-Day. I'm not going to get into details about that, and I guess to avoid spoilers for anybody who cares. I'm just not going to take that into consideration. I don't think that should necessarily matter. I think we should just implement her regardless of that. So I'm not taking that into account either when I'm thinking about how she could work in this game. just for the record. That M-Day shit is crazy though. Like I didn't know that was a thing until I was doing research for this video. So that was wild to learn about. But yeah, I think she could use these energy plasmoids as just like a standard projectile. You throw some forward, you throw some upward. I think she could send some at the ground that could create traps that detonate after a certain amount of time, or better yet, send them in the air to prevent characters from jumping or flying around, which I think would be particularly effective against characters who do have these unique movement options like a Magneto or an Iron Man, or if it's any of my characters that I have on this list that have these unique options, right? Where she can just control the space in the neutral very well and just set these traps and just have these explosions going off. And yeah, I feel like she definitely would have more of a range game and probably wouldn't necessarily be, you know, up my alley, but I still think she'd be a really cool character to see regardless. So I put her on the list anyway. Up next at number 6 on the list, we have the leader of the X-Men himself, Mr. Scott Summers, my dog, my man, my guy, my boy, Cyclops. Now, Cyclops actually is one of my favorite members of the X-Men. I always thought he was really, really cool. And you know what I think it is? I think it's the visor, bro. It just always gave him like this really cool futuristic look that I just always thought was super, super dope. Now, I have seen some iterations where it doesn't look as cool, but for the most part, the visor always looks really cool to me. And then you have like the X-Men cartoon where he always wore like the sunglasses, which I'm sure he wears sunglasses in a lot of different like appearances that he makes both in comics and, you know, TV and movies and stuff. But that's just the first one that comes to my mind because that's the one I watched as a kid. But yeah, man, Cyclops is really cool. Really, really cool. Now, Cyclops, unlike some of these other characters that we've talked about, has actually appeared in Marvel vs. Capcom. And in Marvel vs. Capcom, it's interesting how they implement him because Cyclops doesn't really do a whole lot outside of his blast, right? His eye beams, or optic blast, I guess I should call it, right? And there's a bunch of different ways you can do that where, you know, again, you know, he has an optic blast that he fires directly at the opponent, optic blast that he shoots upward, things like that. He could probably use the optic blast in order to create unique movement options for himself where it pushes him around the screen and things like that. He can fly with it. That's all well and good. But when it comes to just like regular combat, it's like, okay, do you make him a zoner so that he just is completely and totally reliant on optic blast? Or do you give him more hand-to-hand stuff? And what they did in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is that he's kind of like a Shoto that also has optic blast moves. And it's not the most exciting, it's not the most interesting. Like, I like the idea of Cyclops, but the more I thought about it, I was like, huh, gameplay wise, like he wouldn't be the lamest character ever, but there's definitely characters that I would probably vibe with a lot more than him. And he's somebody I'd be picking more for the aesthetic than the actual gameplay itself. And that goes a long way for me, you know what I'm saying? I'm somebody who values the gameplay and the look of my character a lot. And Cyclops would look really sick in this game. I'm certain of it, right? I know his design would be heat in this game, but I don't know. I'd have to see what they do because I don't imagine that they go that route, right? Because he dead ass was just like Ryu, but with optic blasts in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I mean, he was a little cooler than Ryu, but you know what I'm saying? I don't know what approach they would take because obviously they don't want to just copy that. They're trying to separate themselves from MVC2 as much as they can. That's why you see a character like Magneto who's using like way more actual like metal stuff in his kit compared to just being a guy who flies around doing kung fu like he does in Marvel. Or like he does in Marvel vs. Capcom, I should specify. But yeah, I don't know, like one way or another, I would like to believe Cyclops probably ends up in the game anyway because, I mean, he's Cyclops, he's the leader of the X-Men. Like, I just feel like he's way too popular of a character to not end up in there at some point. And whether that's in this first season or 3 seasons from now, I'm excited, I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see it because I really want to see how they do his kit and if they make him really saucy or if he's kind of generic. But I'd be happy to see him either way. And now we get to the top 5, and these are the characters that I'm actually really hoping to see, you know what I'm saying? Because all 5 of these characters from this point on are characters that, like, if they get added to the game, I'm very likely to actually pick up and play and potentially add to my team, you know what I'm saying? Especially if they execute it well, and I don't really see a world where they don't do these well. So at number 5, we have White Fox, Miss Amy Han herself. Another somewhat recent addition to Marvel Rivals, and I got my reasons. But I ain't gonna lie, hands up, you caught me. I never heard of her prior to Marvel Rivals. I'm gonna keep it a stack. But now that I know who she is, I'm tapped all the way. Because look, first of all, she's gorgeous. All right, let's go ahead and get that out the way. But second of all, as soon as you start talking about a 9-tailed fox, anything, I'm sold. Sign me up. Bro, y'all know me. I'm a massive Naruto fan, okay? I love Naruto. I know I'm really known for Dragon Ball more than Naruto. I like Naruto more than I like Dragon Ball. All respects to Dragon Ball and rest in peace Akira Toriyama. But I'm a Masashi Kishimoto fanboy, bro. I love me some Naruto. So as soon as you start talking about some 9-tailed fox, that's where my head immediately goes. So anytime I see something like that, she gets immediate brownie points for me. You know, I start thinking Kurama from Yu Yu Hakusho. I'm thinking Naruto. Kurama's also a 9-tailed demon fox, by the way, in case you didn't know. I start thinking Ari as well with the fox fire and the fox tails, fox motif and everything like that. And obviously Ari is a character, well, she's really in League of Legends, but I think of her as Ari from 2XKO as it applies to me because I play Ari and Akali in 2XKO. You know, who's surprised? Nobody. But yeah, the Fox motif is something I always gravitate toward, whether it's Kurama, whether it's Ari, like I said, Yusuke in Persona 5, one of my favorite characters in that game, Kunimitsu, newly released character in Tekken 8, who's one of my current mains. Anytime you got like a Kitsune thing going on, I'm all for that. Now, on the surface level, I could see how some people would say like, oh, wouldn't it be kind of redundant having her in the game with like a character like Wolverine or Black Panther already existing, because she's probably just gonna, you know, have like some claw slashing type abilities and moves and everything like that. And to that I say, don't care, first and foremost. But second of all, I think she actually does offer enough to distinguish herself from characters like that and make her a bit more unique and different, particularly with the transformation things that she's got going on. So I have a couple of ideas when it comes to this character. Okay, so check me out. She can have a combination of like these spectral blasts and melee attacks. I did take a look at her kit in Marvel Rivals, and I saw that like she's a character that relies on these projectiles, and at some point you unlock the ability for her to be more melee centric. And I could see how I could translate that to a game like this, where you could have an install, you could have her be a stance character, or it could just be a character who just has melee attacks, you know, generally speaking, then her special moves are projectiles. Like, you could easily do that either way, right? But another really cool direction you could go is making her like Valkenheim from Blaze Blue, you know what I'm saying, where she's constantly just transforming while she's like hacking, slashing and clawing and attacking and punching and kicking. She's transforming back and forth between being the fox and being like a human form. Now, I did see that her fox form is supposed to be like kind of big, but it's not like, I don't know if it necessarily has to be. Like, it could be, I don't know if she can control the size of the fox form or not, if it has to be gigantic, or if it's like, you know, like Hulk size but not like too big to translate into a fighting game. I don't know, but that was just something that I looked into, and I was like, this could be pretty cool, because as I started seeing her kit and saw the transformation thing, I was like, yo, it would be really cool if she like transformed back and forth throughout her animations like you do with Valkenheim in Blaze Blue. I think that'd be really, really cool. And even if you don't want to go that route, I guess the fox transformation itself could just be like an ultimate attack, an ultimate super or whatever, or you could even turn it into like an install, I guess, something that she activates and, you know, is in for a limited amount of time or whatever. There's multiple different ways to approach it, but I think between, you know, having the projectiles and the fox transformation, regardless of how you implement it, and then also, you know, building up the foxfire stacks, unlocking more of her tails, and she powering up as she gets more and more tails attached to her. Which, by the way, again reminds me of Ari, because Ari earlier on in 2XKO had like a similar mechanic where she built up these stacks, but then eventually this made it so that she just has it permanently all the time, and it just removed that from her kit by the time the game actually released. But yeah, I think White Fox would translate very well, and I would like to see it. I think that's a character that I would very much like to play. Anytime you're talking about like some sort of like rushdown speedster character, they're probably going to be at my alley, which is why Wolverine is going to be one of my top picks. And even if she is similar to a character like Wolverine in some capacity, which I may have one or two more characters on this list who are like that, I don't care. Like I said, my list, I want to see it. Oh, I almost forgot. There's a couple more things that I wanted to mention too. She also has the ability to like charm and like use hypnosis, right? So that's another thing that you can implement in her kit, where, you know, her projectiles could work similar to like a Sub-Zero-esque ice ball kind of thing, where it like stuns or restands opponents or something like that. Or you could go a different route where it's kind of more like, you know how in Dragon Ball FighterZ Tien has the Chaozu call, and Chaozu kind of like stuns them or whatever. Or even like how Master Roshi has his command grab with the hypnosis. Anything sort of like that, I feel like you could do with like her charm or hypnosis ability and make that work in a fighting game as well. I think those are multiple different avenues that you can explore with that. And she also has like a life absorption kind of ability. I know that in Marvel Rivals, she's actually a healer, so you could easily just give her like a level 1 super or a command grab or something that just recovers a little bit of HP. And, you know, you could help translate that ability as well. So I don't know, food for thought. I think she'd be cool. I want to see it. But anyway, moving on to number 4. And at number 4, hey man, man, look, mind your business, all right? We must stay focused, my brothers. We must stay focused. I swear this is about fighting games. And maybe a little bit else. We got Felicia Hardy, Black Cat. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Need that expeditiously. God. Now, despite the obvious, okay, there are genuine gameplay reasons why I would like to see her in this game. Because first and foremost, she's an Olympic level athlete, which I guess isn't uncommon in the Marvel universe, but she's one of those characters that really leans into that. Every time you see Black Cat, she's always like swinging from stuff and doing flips and moving around and using the grappling hook and swinging around and everything like that, right? So she is a very acrobatic character that actually utilizes that a lot, and I would love to see movement like that implemented into her kit, where she is flipping around and everything like that. Like I said, you've seen a common trend. I like characters that do flips, okay? But I think she'd be a pretty movement and rushdown oriented character that just wants to get in and just pummel you with melee attacks. And again, it's like, oh, well, wouldn't she be very similar to White Fox in a lot of ways, or wouldn't she be really similar to Wolverine? Don't care. Don't care. Again, I think the way that you separate her and make her kit a little bit different from a character like that is like the movement options you can implement with like a wall cling, wall jumps, whatever, doing the flips. I know she uses a grappling hook in a Spider-Man-esque kind of way, I don't necessarily want that, but if you did that, I wouldn't be mad at it. Because obviously I know Spider-Man has his web already and everything like that. I don't want to impede too much or infringe on him too much. But then again, it's like I'm saying the same thing, because like she gonna use her claws and slash and scratch kind of in a similar way to like Wolverine or a Black Panther or something like that. But so who really cares? Not me, honestly. But like I would just prefer that. Maybe I'm just not a big fan of grappling hooks in general. Like I wouldn't be mad at it, but I would just prefer to see her just jumping around as opposed to using that as her movement option. You know what I'm saying? That's just me personally. But like, I'm telling you, you give her a Dragon Ball FighterZ Trunk style flip special move, man, we in there like swimwear. Now, I will say, I understand that like her actual superpower is like probability manipulation and just like being able to manipulate luck. I'm gonna be so for real, I don't know how you implement that in the game. Like I don't have the brain for that. Somebody out there can figure it out. And please do, because I want Black Cat in the game. All right, and now we get into the top 3. And coming in at number 3, we got my dog Gambit. Yes, sir. Look, I think staff users are incredibly underrated in anime and manga and video games, fighting games specifically, RPGs. I love staff users, okay? It doesn't mean that I always pick the staff user if it's available, or always pick the staff as a weapon if it's available, but I do love characters like Keelik in Soul Calibur, okay? I always thought that Jade was pretty cool in Mortal Kombat, and using a staff I think is pretty cool, like using his glider as a staff, and even using that in the Avatar Legends fighting game that's releasing, which releases tonight if this video goes up when it's supposed to, and is out now if you're watching this on Thursday or anytime after. Oh, and even when I like briefly tried out BlazBlue Central Fiction, I was playing Lychee in that game, who is also a staff user. So I like staff users, and obviously, you know, Goku with the power pole. I love that stuff, man. I eat that up. I also just always thought Gambit was just like really swaggy. I just always loved the aesthetic, the whole gimmick he's got with the playing cards. I always thought was super cool. Obviously, there's a million ways you implement that. You use those as projectiles. You know what I'm saying? He could throw those forward. He can throw those upward. Throw them at the ground and they detonate. Throw them on people. Stick them on them. They explode after a certain amount of time passes. You can have like different variations of the cards where they explode at different intervals, a la like Kimberly's spray cans in Street Fighter 6, something along those lines, right? So I do think the playing cards would be a very crucial part of his kit and would be very prevalent and used in a variety of ways. But just make sure that you're throwing a lot of those staff normals for me where he's whirling and twirling, because I got to see that. I need that. Otherwise, the Gambit not complete. And Gambit, much like Cyclops, it's a character that has been in Marvel vs. Capcom. So I don't know if it's a character that like they want to maybe avoid, or if they do add him, he's going to be different than how he plays in that game. So exactly how they implement him would be interesting for me to see. Like obviously Gambit is popular, right? I don't think he's as popular as Cyclops. So even though Cyclops has been in MVC, similar to like Wolverine, I feel like he's almost like, okay, you're not base roster, but I feel like at some point you got to add him into the game, right? Gambit, I don't know if he's as much of a shoe-in. I think he still has a pretty good chance of eventually being added. And I hope so, because like I said, he's one of the characters that I would like to see most, as a character that I can see myself really enjoying and playing in this game. Coming in at number 2, we got Daredevil, Mr. Matt Murdock himself. We've already gotten some sort of like teasers in the game. You know, you can see the law firm in the background. He's been mentioned. We see him in the window and everything like that. I don't think that seeing characters in the background on stages or them getting referenced on everything like that means that they won't be in the game or they won't be playable. In fact, I think if anything, it means the opposite. You know what I'm saying? Matter of fact, I was just watching Maximilian's stream a couple of days ago, right? And he was doing a showcase with the devs for Avatar Legends. And a question that people had about that game was that if a character is appearing in the background as an assist character, does that mean that they won't be playable as an official, like, you know, character? And the answer to that is no, because Katara appears as an assist for one of the variations of Aang, but Katara is also her own playable character. Now, obviously, Katara is the type of character, like, how could you make an Avatar fighting game and Katara not be playable? That's a no-brainer. But they basically were just saying, like, no, that doesn't necessarily mean that. And so, likewise, in a game like this, I don't think just because a character shows up in the background as an NPC or something like that means that they won't be playable. In fact, in one of the stages, you can vaguely see Blade in the background, and obviously he will be playable in the game. So I think Gambit was also in the background of the X Manor, and there's a couple other characters who've been in the background that I may or may not be ready to talk about, and that I hope to see at some point, or that may or may not end up in the game. But you also see a ton of different references and Easter eggs, right? You know, so it's not only just, you know, Matt Murdock, but also like Dazzler and Luna Snow, and you know, there's She-Hulk in the background I saw on one of the stages, and a ton of stuff, right? So I don't think that rules out the possibility of that at all. And I think Daredevil actually has a pretty good shot of being added into this game. And like I said, even though it wasn't like one of my like criteria for the list, I don't Ain't Daredevil's ever been in a fighting game before? I ain't really look it up, but he ain't been in no fighting game that I know of. And I think he deserves to be in one. And why not start with this one? So obviously Daredevil uses his billy clubs, and he has a variety of different things he does with that. Everything from just like clubbing people with them, spinning them around, twirling them like nunchucks and everything like that. I think it'd be really easy to implement that into his list of like normal moves. But he's also like a really acrobatic and athletic character who could like do a bunch of spinning around, flipping, dipping, whipping, something like that. Also, I didn't realize he was getting down like this. Like, I knew he was nice with hand-to-hand combat. I found a video on the official Marvel website where it listed like the top 10 like martial arts users in the verse. He's number 8 on that list. I didn't realize he was throwing down like that. I didn't realize he had hands like that. Like, I knew he had hands, but top 8 in the verse, I didn't know it was like that. You know what I'm saying? So close quarter combats, acrobatic athlete, billy club. I'm here for that. I'm here for that. Billy club's not exactly like one of my favorite weapons or anything like that, but he makes it work. He makes it look really cool. And it's certainly not the same thing, but it vaguely reminds me of like using Tonfa, just a little bit. It's obviously not the same, but you know, I like Talon in Soul Calibur, so it just kind of reminds me of that, just a tiny little bit, just a tiny little bit. He's another character that like does like fire a grappling hook from time to time, like from his billy clubs. I don't really need that. I'd rather just see him just move organically, just like physically without the grappling hook. If they add it, I wouldn't be mad at it, because I would just be hyped that he's in the game. You also can do like the cross dash that he has from like Marvel Rivals. That could be either a command dash or a lariat. I could see them implementing that as its own movement option where he can use it to get in or out. I think that'd be pretty cool. I think with the billy clubs and swinging them around like nunchucks, he could also do that like as a multi-hitting special move, or kind of like how Deadpool deflects stuff with his swords and twirling them around. He could also have something very similar where it's like a parry or something like that, where he deflects projectiles by twirling the billy clubs. And you know, one of the defining things about Daredevil is that he's blind, right? But he has other like heightened senses and can see even though he's blind. But he has like sonar sense, right? And you could give him something like a parry or a counter, you know, that just works against like physical attacks as he's activating his sonar sense. So it'd just be like a stance that he activates. It's a parry. If you strike him with a melee attack while he's in the stance, you get automatically countered and it does a chunk of damage or whatever, you know what I'm saying? I think that's something they could easily implement to like kind of do that, because like Spider-Man has like his Spidey sense kind of dodge thing or whatever, right? I think you could do something similar with Daredevil, and I think that'd be really cool. But regardless of how they implement him, I think he'd be super dope, and I want him bad enough to have him number 2 on my list. But he's not number 1. But you know who is coming in at number 1, and if you know me well enough, this comes as a shock to absolutely nobody. You probably guessed it. If you've been watching this channel, you probably could have imagined who my number 1 was before you even clicked on this video. At number 1, we got baby girl Psylocke. What did I say earlier, man? What did I say earlier? Sword boys and ninja girls. Now you give me a ninja girl with a sword, I'm tapped all the way in. Look, Kimberly in Street Fighter 6, Kunimitsu in Tekken 8 and in Tekken 7, Akali and 2XKO, I have a type, okay? No one's surprised. Y'all been new. Don't act brand new. I'm already knowing if they add Psylocke to this game, she's on the team. That is my number 1 most wanted character, because there's just not a world where I don't think she's super sick and super fun to play. Between the psionic blades, it's the psionic katana, man. Come on, son. I would love to see her have a moveset where like most of her like melee attacks are her like striking and slashing with like her psionic katana, having a projectile throw in the shuriken. And she can also do stuff like using telepathy to create like illusions of herself, so doing like fake clones on like some after image type shit, kind of like Krillin. I think that could be really cool. There's a lot of stuff you can do with her. Also like her like astral projection move. So when I was learning about like some of her abilities a little bit more in depth, right? The specific one that caught my attention was the ability in Marvel Rivals, which is like her astral projection, which is kind of like this dash that she has. And I feel like you could do that, like straight up, just copy Seox's dash from Grand Blue Fantasy vs Rising. I played Seox in Grand Blue. Straight up, just copy that move like word for word, bar for bar, and I think that'd be perfect. If I remember correctly, the way it works for Seox is like where if you tap the button, you get like this clone or like projection of him that like lunges forward and like attacks the enemy, right? But if you hold it, you actually like dash to them, right? So on block, it can be kind of negative. On hit, you can, I don't remember, can you combo from it, or you're at least advantageous? But either way, like I straight up think like you could just copy that like bar for bar and it'd be pretty fire. She's also another character that has the ability to like not hypnotize people, but like induce paralysis in people. So again, like if you want to do something where like she has a command grab that stuns you, or you know, has another like hypnosis, not hypnosis, like a telepathic ability that like stuns the opponent temporarily or something like that. Again, you could compare it to like Chaozu from DBFZ or like Roshi's hypnosis move or something like that. because like I said, I know White Fox has something like that. And again, like when you start seeing overlap and parallels and repeating trends and patterns, remember, I'm not saying that all these characters got to get implemented, or that even like 2 or 3 of them that are the same. Like you give me Psylocke, I don't care about nobody else. You know what I'm saying? That's my number one. You know what I'm saying? Just make sure that the sword slashes is fast and the movement is fluid, and I'm in there. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is my list. I spent a lot of time getting my notes together for this and learning more about these characters, because as somebody who is not well versed in the comics, I try my best to do some homework and do a little bit of due diligence, you know what I'm saying? So I apologize if I'm not as informed as some other creators that you might watch, or if my list isn't as unique as some people, you know what I'm saying? But I did my best to come up with some stuff that I thought was cool, and that, like I said, that I would want to play. And you know, to be able to actually translate some of it a little bit to how I could see them working in a fighting game. So hopefully y'all enjoy it. Like I said, I did my best. But with that, what do you guys think of my list? What does your list look like? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Hit this video with a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already, so you can stay tuned for all this content that I'm bringing you. With all that being said, that's pretty much all I have today. And remember, nothing can happen to you from the bad. Later.